Didn't you get a good run for your money, though? I hope so. There's a lot more about sex that I can tell you about. Is sex used for procreation purposes? You use it for recreational purposes until you find out that it's for procreational purposes. You know what happens to my daughter has a petting zoo, and she used to have lions and tigers and bears, oh my, and the petting zoo with less dangerous animals. She has mountain lions and panthers, and she sold all those animals. But what she noticed about the panthers especially is that when the male has done his thing, you better not go near her again. She'll kill him. This can go beyond nature very easy, because animals don't use, because everybody's very fond of using animals as examples of how natural everything is, except when it comes to recreational sex. I don't see animals having recreational sex. It's in season or it ain't. And it's for that one purpose. So what? It's in season or it ain't. And it's for that one purpose. So what? So if you want to compare yourself with animals, how are you going to manage with that one? Besides, human beings aren't animals. We can sink lower than animals. As a matter of fact, don't mention animals and human beings on the same level to me, because animals come out much better. Human beings have the ability to sink lower than animals, and animals can't be any more than what they are. So God made them that way, and that's the way. God didn't make us the way we are. And we have choices. We became the way we are because we followed the footstep of our degenerate parents. Sorry to say, who never found the way and never gave the way to us. And of course, everything homosexuals will tell you how normal they are. You know, as I said, every time I get on the radio and ask them that question, it's homosexuality. Every time I get on the radio and ask them that question, is homosexuality normal? How do I know it isn't normal? I always ask the question. Well, if you're the person that thinks it's normal, I'd like to ask you a question. What would your opinion of a person eating a hot dog with his nose? See, if you can believe that's normal, you can believe anything. Give me 25 minutes alone with you and I'll fix your brain. Everything is normal. That when you degenerate to it, you defend it. Didn't I say that in the beginning? Everything you will defend. You won't find any, even drug addicts resist the pressure to change them. You say drug addiction is normal? I don't see any drug addicts in nature. I see the cows eating the corn sometimes when it's a little bit rancid and they all get drunk, but they're not there looking for it all the time. They're not there looking for it all the time. They don't. So, yeah, it's true that people will have recreational sex. Well, if you just examine the word recreation, you'll see it's comprised of two words: recreation. And you'll see with a little recreational sex, you'll see what kind of a bitch you have after a while and what a son of a bitch you become. And you don't see that in nature. You'll pardon the expression, because these are words not used as swear words, but used to describe us as we become. Isn't that right? The worst, you're reaching through a woman, you're reaching for a woman, through her and beyond her, beyond which nature will permit. If you want to experiment and find out what you're married to and what you turn into as a result of that, go ahead. See what kind of person you're married to. If you train her to be that for you, sir, married to, if you train her to be that for you, sir, may Lord have mercy on your soul, but it won't be long before you find out what the reason why women turn into animals or evil monsters. You wake up, you think you marry this beautiful little thing. You wake up one morning and what you've got is an animal on you. And you got your hands full. You're scratching your wooden head and wonder what's going on. Like I said, if you marry a sexy lady, you got the biggest bitch that ever walked the face of the earth, and you'll have to live with it. Because you're pulling from her hell. because you're pulling from her hell. You're playing with something beyond her nature and pulling it forth to service you, and you end up being sexually enslaved to it, psychologically and sexually, emotionally attached to it. And that's true of every oh.
No, it's nothing what you said, right?
Yeah, you got restless. Oh, no wonder. I forgot he was there. I would have been more careful with my words. Anyway, now as the question is, my relationship with my wife is personal, but I'll tell you this. I'm not having sex with poison. But it's my fault for bringing it out. Does anybody know what I'm talking about, having sex with poison? Sex with poison? Want to have a go with it?
Yeah, I mean, not with it.
No, yeah.
Okay, go. Spot.
No, just like having some sex with something evil. It poisons you as you relate to it. Yeah. It poisons you as you relate to it. Yeah. There's a problem.
Yeah.
No.
You know, I mentioned before, I'm married with 3 children. And what I see around me now, like I'm 40, right? Now, a lot of the chaps, guys who are similar age to you, right? Now, a lot of the chaps, guys who are similar age to me, the thing that's put forward to them now, they say, if you love your wife enough, you will have a vasectomy, you know? And I sat pondering that one day, and I thought, you know, I could go and get one of those operations and go for it, you know. Sort of. But I was talking to these fellas at dinner time, and I said, look, what's happening to us now in Britain? We're getting a spiritual vasectomy, if you like. It's okay, you can be anything, and there's no consequences. Where I thought to myself, you know, it'd be really easy for me to... I thought, the problem's still there. And
that's right.
Yeah, and I thought, well, I'm only running away from the problem, and I'm not solving
anything. You don't have to have
yeah.
Once you do that, you don't think you need any discipline.
Yeah.
No consideration for your wife.
Yeah.
You don't need any understand of the consequences of you're not doing it enough.
Well, this is what you're told now. You're told you've got to do this 5 times a week, and there's all this thing about you've got to keep a woman happy, and I know, but
it's all over. It's everywhere.
Before,
it's everywhere.
There's a space that you can find between a man and a woman, land, but suddenly you find it's like a sanctuary away from all this mess that we're into, and it's getting like a sex war now between men and women.
Of course.
And you know, all there is out there, if you're going to get cut on the barbed wire of what you're into, it's like a war zone. And if you want to be into, it's like a war zone. And if you want to be there, get right on with these sex experts and people, because that's where they're leading to.
You listen to them and you've had it.
Yeah, I mean, I can only speak from my experience, but I found a sanctuary that I didn't even know existed.
I'll give you a little clue. The less sex is the better sex. The less sex is the better sex.
Oh, yeah, I found that out
is that
eventually.
Right?
But you've got to go through.
The less is better until it's nothing.
Yeah, I can appreciate the people sitting here who are really, they're getting really hurt by what you're saying.
That's all the sex addicts.
Yeah.
Like drug addicts, you talk about drugs the same way.
Exactly. But I felt the same when I first came to the seminar. But I said to someone, you've got to hang on in there and go through, allow yourself time and space to look at it properly.
Right.
And I just think the meditation.
Now you want to know the psychological reason for why I'm saying that. You want to know the psychological reason for why I'm saying that. You want to know the reason why I'm saying it now? Does anybody want to know? Glad you asked me the question. The psychological reason is because man is a fallen being. He's not a risen ape. If it was a risen ape, he wouldn't have any problems, because risen apes don't have any problems. See, in other words, evolution will take care of everything. You see, I mean, sheep don't have problem with rams, and storks don't have mating problems. They stay mated for this, and They don't do all that stuff. And there's no divorce courts. There's no divorce courts. They just learn to live in harmony with each other. Why can't we? It's because we're out of sync with our natures. We're unnaturally natural. We're mutants from reality is what we are. Naturally natural. We're mutants from reality is what we are. Mutations. God, I was walking. I have a beautiful ranch in Oregon, courtesy of the Foundation of Human Understanding. But I take the money that I earn from. By the way, I take the money that's sent to me. If I have a little extra, I get good deals. Instead of the bank making the money, I will make the money just like the bank does. So I buy a piece of property and sell it for twice as much. Then I use it to operate on. So on this beautiful ranch, while I'm living there for a while, everything's for sale all the time. And meanwhile, we use it to have guest money for the foundation. So, I'm walking through there and see this beautiful deer. And, right in Oregon we have bear, mountain lion, deer. Don't see those others too much, but deer you see quite a bit of. And they're all beautiful. Everyone is as nature beautiful, gracious. Then you go in the city and look at people. Ugh. Ugly, degenerate, funny looking, squint-eyed looking, weaselly looking. Look at you. I don't mean to be rude. Look at me. Okay? What's happening to us? One of the reasons is because we eat cooked food. If it doesn't. If you're a farmer and we have 100 head of cattle there, and it wouldn't take a stretch of imagination to see what would happen if you pay. I don't have to be a scientist, to prove it to myself. No one's going to do that experiment anyway. They don't want to find out the truth. Cooked hay. They seem to get, and I see a spider eating a fly. A spider is a fly. And hay is, grass is fly. A spider is a fly. And hay is, grass is animal. So somehow it manages to get what it wants out of that little. I got a parrot in a cage and it eats sunflower seeds. I don't see anything else. But sunflowers equals parrot. But it's not. I'm not going to sunflowers equals parrot. But it's not. I'm not going to cook his sunflower seeds. No parrot. The hair will fall out, be bald. Probably have all the diseases of indigestion and enzyme depletion. See? So you got to learn to go back to what is natural for you. We can't do it. We're all addicted. All addicted to our little concoctions that make us feel like kings. Now, but the point is, we're fallen beings, and we're so into our culture, and our culture is so into us, and good and noble and brave and just shadows, ambitious little shadows. And we marvel in our science. Our science is just a compensation for our ill health. Your intellect is a compensation for your intellect is a compensation for your lack of fall away from common sense. Whoever taught a canary how to sing, and a bee how to build a hive, and a bird how to build a nest? Why did they have to go to school? I'm not saying you shouldn't go to school. There are things we can learn. But I want to know why all these things. Does the health of a nation depend upon some government or hospital or cleverness of a doctor? I'm not saying we shouldn't have doctors, but we become more and more dependent on it. In America, 1/7 of the national product goes for health. I haven't been the perfect model of a person for all these years. I don't think I spent $3,000 or $4,000 over 45 years in America on medical bills or toothache or something like that. See, I still got my teeth. 66 years old. That's all bad looking, all sticking out in different directions. See? What's wrong with the human race? It's falling. It's degenerating. And at each level of degeneration, we excuse it. And if you look at everybody with their little seedy little habits, you'll see They'll defend their drinking, their drugs, they'll defend everything. If there's such strange little sexual practices, they'll defend it. The whole life is focused on it. Wherever you get your goodies, wherever your life revolves around, look at the average man. Don't let me look at the average man. I don't want to look at him. But the point is, look at the average man and just look how he thinks. From the cradle to the grave, his whole life revolves around one thing. That's it. He's everything he thinks for the women. He's always looking for approval from women as though she was a god. Well, she became a god. Anybody who excites you and exhorts you to do the wrong thing becomes your master. I say, go ahead, steal that money. I won't tell anybody. The minute you steal it, I got control over you. I won't tell anybody. Just do as I tell you. You don't. Once you become a thief, unless you repent of being a thief, which you don't know how to do, the only way you can be is to be more of a thief, more of a drunk, more of a stud, more of a elitist intellectual idiot. And not they don't have some use, but a good doctor is not a good person necessarily. Maybe a good doctor may even save my life if I had my head cracked in. So I don't know one of them is operating on me. I don't care. I'm talking about generally speaking. Operating on me. I don't care. I'm talking about generally speaking. You can be a good doctor and a good person. And a good doctor will make you need him less. And so if you go to hospital, and you're always going to hospital, what kind of hospital is that? You're never going to be well. But what kind of hospital is that? You're never going to be well. If you're addicted to going to hospital, which most people are, you're addicted to everything, especially getting well. Now the idea of a hospital is that you shouldn't need a hospital. The idea of Roy Masters is you shouldn't need me anymore. Doesn't mean to say you can't love me and help me to help others. The idea of a church is you shouldn't need a church. See, this is a little non-profit organization. It may even be a church. If there's any advantages tax-wise, we'll do it, but for no other reason. See, and so you shouldn't need a church. I said you shouldn't need one. You shouldn't need your wife. I didn't say you couldn't have one. The less you need your wife, the more of a man you are. And the more as a man you encourage your wife not to need you, the more of a woman she'll be. See, otherwise you're clinging together like a couple of dumbed down monkeys. You're making each other God. You put him on a pedestal, she puts you on a pedestal, big deal. You just deteriorate, enslaved to each other. Because the love of the world is an enmity. It gives you the idea that you're alive when you're dying. So the ego, the more alive it becomes, the more dead it is, and the less it wants to realize it. It wants to deny that it's dying. Did you know young people can hardly make them see that their self-indulgent, disgusting, degenerate way? As you get older, it's too late. Maybe not too late. You know, your hair's falling out, you lost your teeth, and you're changing your look in your mirror, and the mirror looks back at you and somebody else you don't even know who it is. It's looking back at you. But you start to get older, and you start to realize. You start to get older, and you start to realize the truth that you are vulnerable, and that you are dying. And then you start running around looking for an answer, looking for a church, looking for a religion, but there's all kinds of traps there too. We're dying, and we don't like to. The alcoholic is dying dead wrong. He doesn't want to admit he's wrong, so he drinks more of the same thing that made him dead wrong to make him dead to wrong. See? And so we're dying, and the good Lord says the wages of sin of death. He said, you shall surely die, and the serpent says, no, you're not dying. You're not going to die. Here, let me help you. So, you see, we inherit that whole thing of denying death, denying truth, trying to find life where it doesn't exist. It's ego life. Who preserves his ego life shall lose it. That's what who preserves his ego life shall lose it. That's what the scripture, if you translate it from the Aramaic, it will read, who shall preserve his ego animal life and breath. That's the whole meaning of it. Shall lose your spiritual life. So you keep preserving your ego animal life. You just watch them in the breakfast room in the morning. Keep preserving your ego animal life. You just watch them in the breakfast room in the morning, stuffing themselves with English breakfast. See? And what is an English breakfast? It makes you it makes you more English. You eat spaghetti, you're more of Italian. You drink your vodka, now you're an Italian. Your culture made you, but not what God made you. Civilization falls. The word of God in the heart of the man, before he fell, was potential civilization. In the seed of the oak tree, there's the oak tree, but also a forest of trees. Became many men. Through one man's sin, and the whole human race came into existence, you see. So we're fallen beings, and what rises to support the fallen man is what we call culture. And culture is sick. Even the best of it. English culture is the best. American and English culture, Jewish culture, Judaic. American and English culture, Jewish culture, Judeo-Christian culture. There are cultures that are magnificent, but misused. We only need the laws to keep the bad guys from getting to us while we practice our spirituality. The Ten Commandments are not for me. I don't compete. The Ten Commandments are not for me. I'm not going to commit any crimes, murder you, take your wife. I'm not going to envy you and your property, covet. I'm not going to do these things. I don't need any Ten Commandments. I don't need any of your rules and laws, a Talmud. I don't need a preacher telling me. Because a bee doesn't need anyone to teach him how to be a bee. Doesn't need how to be. Yeah, just knows how to be without being taught how to be a bee. It does, yeah. Hello, Eddie.
Sometimes results from the meditation.
But
as you give up sex and give up drink, you actually get more pain from giving up things.
I never did.
The
I
ego.
never did, though. I don't know what it is. I know that people do, and maybe if I'm, without being offensive to you, I may have not fallen as far as you did. That's not to put you down or anything. Is that you started on the journey. I started on my journey in the cradle, practically. See, with a few deviations. So I know that it will do that. If you lived a rotten, foolish life, then you're going to feel like this part of you that's falling, that's not being supported, is dying.
It's dying.
It will feel like you're dying, but you're not. Because when you feel like you're living, you're not. It's just the opposite of what you think it is, you see. You're living in what we call delusion, what the Hindus call illusion.
So that's my ego life.
Well, a lot of people feel that for that reason they won't meditate, because they feel like they're freaking out. They're starting to die. It's starting to. The Christians call that being slain in the spirit. Yeah, but most of them never experience that.
Yeah. Does that mean I'm just not sorry enough?
No, you're doing fine. Just
Yeah.
I can't.
Does that mean I'm just not sorry enough?
No, you're doing fine. Just
Yeah.
I can't tell you
continue.
where you are. You're a good, decent soul. So you'll find your own way. You don't need a whole lot of instruction.
Yeah. It just takes
Whatever you know,
totally.
whatever you want to know, you'll know in time. But now coming to the point of the fallen man, I was giving you a preamble to that. One second. The preamble to that fallenness is that man is an eternal being, and you can't think of Jesus Christ, forgive me for saying, that's shacking up with some broad. See? Looking for love in all the wrong places. This is the perfect man. And the way he loved women, he did love women. He saved them. Preacher once said, the guy asked the preacher, what do you do, preacher? He said, well, I save bad women. Yeah, that's right, save one for me. That's right. You stole my lines. You see? He wasn't stole my lines. You see? He wasn't saving them in the way, it wasn't saving him for himself. But he saved them with love. He restored them to dignity. Men don't do that. Now I can't say men don't do that. Now I can't say when you get married you can't help but do that. But even in the Christian doctrine it says that men should have wives as if they did not have any. What does that mean? That was as much as it said that. But I got the message. Everybody will gloss that over. Together, there's one love that draws you together so that you can realize the folly of that love, have your children with that love, and then you need another love to be a mother and father with. See? That's not two sex pots. See, children know when you're sexing but the wife is the order and the man is nothing else but a stud bringing home the food to feed the socialist system that you have there. Socialist is always female, even if it's run by men. Okay? Female. So, the fallen man. The fallen man. That's the whole dilemma of this. If men weren't fallen, then the sex would be seasonal and normal, and there would be no recreational sex. It will be what it is, with no conflict about it. But there is conflict about it. And how do you deal with conflict? You deal with conflict. But how does a man drink? How does a man deal with the fact that he has conscience for drinking? His conscience catches up with him for drinking. What does he do? He drinks more. What a rebellious slob. See how he does it? So what does a man do when he gets high on drugs and he comes to his senses? So he gets the pain of the common sense that's catching up with him. Now how does he deal with it? He gets deeper into the drugs. He thumbs his nose at reality. So who you tell me what to do is a matter of speaking. Who are you to tell me that I'm wrong? You thumb your nose at heaven, so to speak, and he drugs himself under the table. You thumb your nose at heaven, so to speak, and he drugs himself under the table. He drugs himself into oblivion. We are descending into different levels of unconsciousness is what we're doing. We value unconsciousness because it takes away pain by virtue it gives us pleasure. Most of the pleasure of that comes from alleviating the pain of guilt. Now, if you know anybody who is on who has a drug addict, I can have him straightened out in 10 minutes, if he's willing. Because all you have to do is get him to a state of repentance. And then the pain is gone, and why does he drink anymore? Or drug? Why would he take drugs? Because either he can't find it, that's why he doesn't know how to deal with the pain, so he drugs himself and drinks himself, or he doesn't want to find it. Don't tell me what to do. Get lost. I don't want anybody preaching to me. And so he can go the rest of the way. I never forget on CBS 2020. You ever heard of 2020? Never forget on CBS 2020. You ever heard of 2020? 60 Minutes? It was 20 years ago, and I saw they had this camera crew going down into the Bowery, where all the drunks are lying in the streets, into the Bowery, where all the drunks are lying in the streets there, the homeless. And so they talked to this man, and they said, why do you like the streets? Why do you drink? And the man says, man, do you think if I would know the answer to that, I'd be here? See, he didn't know. I wanted to go run, jump through that television and talk to him. Because I knew I could help that man. I could hear it. He wants help. And so there are people who want, you've stayed the course so far. Just a few of you ran out. That's all right. I always get a few of those. Going down in flames. I mean, they're still muttering to themselves like, 135 pounds. They think good things are something to eat. They don't appreciate pearls like we do. There's a way that not everything's edible. So what I'm saying is you've got to understand one thing. If you leave here and you don't learn anything else, but discover anything else, that you're that which is awakened by his own fallenness. Sexuality, problems with food, and slow with conscience, then new experiences must be wheeled in, because food is not enough to keep the conscience at bay. Sex is not enough to keep the conscience at bay. then you have to have, but who's going to save you from the bar? See? And so, we're descending all the way to, there's always something that rises to the occasion who understands that need and appeals to it. And we think that person is our friend. The friend is the enemy. And we think that person is our friend. The friend is the enemy. And the enemy is the friend. We got everything backwards. Pardon me, it's too rude. We do have it back to front. And we see things that way. We see things that way. In the what I call the lost books of the Bible, it's the yes. Have you read that book about lost? Oh, you haven't. It's a gold mine. It is the apocryphal writings of the Old and New Testament, especially the New Testament, that have been excerpted from the Bible. That you don't get that Bible now, but these are the Bible that Emperor Constantine threw out in settling a dispute between the warring Christians with one war over it. He threw out most of the books. So what you got left is your Bible with all bits and pieces missing, in case you didn't notice. These are apocryphal books. They are brilliant. You should write to the States or have sent over here. Brilliant. The most beautiful writings you've ever read. It explains the Bible. Most beautiful writings you've ever read. It explains the Bible. You wouldn't need to come to the seminar if you read that. In this writing, the old apocryphal. There's another apocryphal. There's another book you might be able to get with the same writings in it. I'm trying to think of it. I can't think. No. It's another book, a big thick book. It's I'll think of it before I leave here. But it's a very scholarly work. I'll think of it before I leave here. But it's a very scholarly work. No, that's not the Khaboris. It's much more complete than the Khaboris. There's only 10 pages of apocryphal writing. Anyway, in this we have the testament of, and he's on his deathbed, and he's saying to his, he's 150 years old or whatever he was. He's a very old person, and he's giving a legacy to his children regarding life, because that's more important than money. And that one should avoid them. And it says it's right there. He's talking to his sons. Be careful, because he says there's a whole treatise on that. But then it goes on to anger, and it says you must watch anger. And the particular piece that I wanted according to the text, it says, if any person should vex you, my son, and do not be moved to anger. Because, and then it says, and if any man should praise you like you were a holy person, do not be moved when people put you down and degrade you. Do not be moved. Nor the other, do not be moved by people praising you. It doesn't say why, because the Holy Spirit will be destroyed, just be vexed, and depart from you, and you will see your enemies as your friends, and your friends as your enemies. It's brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. It says everything I'm saying here you'll find in there. I don't know, but Lost Books of the Bible is where you'll find it. But there was another one you might find in Britain, and I can't think. It'll come to me before I find in Britain, and I can't think. It'll come to me before the end of the. They did? Lost Books of the Bible. Forgot. Yeah, but you need to get this particular one by World Publishing Company. The Lost Books of the Bible, Forgotten Books of Eden. That's what they call them, but they're all apocryphal writings. Look for them. I can send them to you from America if you want. The anger reverses. The hostility reverses and upsets the way you see things. And you will see your enemies as friends. Sometimes the very people that upset you, you'll see them as your friends because you end up wanting to please them. because you end up wanting to please them. Because now what is in you came from them. Something is reborn in you by virtue of your failing to deal with them properly. It's called sin. It makes a home in you, and it cries out to that which has corrupted you for love. And you've got to be very careful there at this rage. And you've got to be very careful there at this rage. And you, sir, you've been talking to me every now and you've been coming up to me and trying to get a little bit of something from me on the side here. And I want to tell you, if you could just learn when you leave this place, that you go into this maze called London, you go into this maze called London, because London is a very hard place. And it's behind the veneer of English, there's something very cruel. You know that, don't you? And so you're just going to have to sit back and start to watch it and to see what it is, and let people know by that very calmness that you see them, but not be moved to vexation because of it. And if you learn to do that, all of your problems will disappear. You want anything more, a more simple prescription? You know what people will say to me? I'm a psychiatrist. Some of my best friends are psychiatrists. Yeah, they are, truthfully. And I have accolades from the psychiatric profession, those who are still spiritual. And my books, you have psychiatrists writing, saying that I'm one of the greatest psychologists. Practicing the old psychiatry anymore, but nobody knows about it. They just practice it in their own way, which is my way. Excuse me, putting it that way, our way. And and they've learned, and they found out the same thing, that instead of sitting there and letting someone talk their problems out, that's useful because you do get a little insight to how you... Instead of sitting there and letting someone talk their problems out, that's useful because you do get a little insight to how you can sort of home in and help them. But if you just teach them principles... I'll tell you how I learned it. How I learned about religion. You want to know how I learned about religion? I had an institute of hypnosis. I practiced hypnosis for many years when I was... I had an institute of hypnosis. I practiced hypnosis for many years when I was a young man. I escaped from my diamond cutting trade. So I'm a journeyman diamond cutter, my profession. So it isn't that I can do other things other than make a living doing this. I like to polish facets on people now, but it's more fun. But I spent 7 years in a little room without benefit of education, working with people who became very well known. They threw me in jail in America for practicing medicine without a license. But they couldn't get me for fraud. In the jail and couldn't wait to get me out. Guess what it read? Hypnotist practices spells and cells. Headlines. It was all political, of course. They have some strange laws in America. I'm still doing it in full view. They leave me alone. Because I have a religious veneer around me. We have freedom of religion, so how can advice that a priest gives his parishioner be medicine? See, so I've got myself cloaked pretty well. It's all right. And it is religion, by the way. I didn't know it was religion when I was practicing it. So here comes a lady. Terrible anxiety, fears, family breaking apart, very sickly. So I'm teaching her to meditate. I was in the process. Meditation is the reverse of the process. Meditation is inward control. Hypnosis is outer control. A very fine razor's edge marks the spot. See? And if you teach people if you hypnotize people or go through the usual exercise, the hand raising thing. Some hypnotists use it. But that's the one that is most likely to bring you to meditation. But it also can be hypnotism. It can be one or the other, depending on the person doing it. So Freud had some good results with it, but it was not. He couldn't control it. You see, because he didn't understand what's happening. Some people got hypnotized, and then he transformed the symptoms. It looked like They would get center of control, him, and the people, his patients attached to him, and couldn't get better. The mic is not working. Is it all right now? It's now. I can hear it. Okay, can you? Is that better? Oh, it's the window. Okay, is that better now? Me. Can you hear that? I thought you were tuning out. So, but what it was, let me just backtrack a little bit. A fellow who I helped cure from splitting headaches, been to psychiatrists before, and he came to me, and I remember him as one of the first successful people I had. And it was many, many, many years ago, right in the very beginning. And he had these terrible splitting headaches, and he'd been to psychiatrists who hypnotized him. And the psychiatrist says, "When you wake up, your headache will be gone." And he woke up, and the psychiatrist says to him, "Well, how does he feel?" And he says, "My headache's gone." My headache's still there. He was compelled to please the hypnotist. But the hypnotist, the psychiatrist, didn't know he was being hypnotized by his own patient, because he believed he helped him. Preachers do the same thing. They think they're helping at getting everybody jumping up and down, think they're going to heaven. And all they've done is relieve some symptoms, if anything, and make them think. And by the excitement and by the gratefulness people have when they come up to the pulpit, "Oh, Jesus saved me." He really believes that, but he hasn't saved him at all. A born-again turkey is still a turkey, you see what I mean? He's just mesmerized the whole crowd with emotions. It's hysterical control. And so, but the point is, so that what they have not understood is that there's a mechanism in the mind that could be guide in there, who are really ready, suddenly take over their own lives, and they get better. But it's not the result of suggestion. Suggestion hasn't got the power to make anybody better. Only be self-deceived. Suggestion has no power. Words have no power unless they lead. Suggestion has no power. Words have no power unless they lead you to the truth. I get good results because I teach people to be better and therefore get better, and to bond with their Creator inside. But the evidence that a person has found God, or the Creator, the evidence is he responds less and less to the world around him. He has less and less needs. He's totally fulfilled inside. He's fulfilled by the goodness of his works. Not because people see him do good works and he gets the praise of it. People see him do good works and he gets the praise of it. It's not as he does what right is without fanfare. As he does or she does what is right, motivated by that inner, the inner is pleased with you and fulfills you. Just like you're a slave of some tyrant to you. See? This is what you people are all looking for. You're still looking for the love of the world. Now you have something you want to say to me? Oh, all right then. Sorry. Just right. Cheerio. Yes, sir. Yeah. A person who smokes is managing his stress in the wrong way. I hope I was making that clear. Well, then some people are not too bright. So you have to go with some people.
How would you deal with extreme stress? Without either smoking, deal with extreme stress. Without either smoking or drinking.
Well, I don't smoke and I don't drink.
Right. So how do you deal with stress in your
life?
Well,
that's because I deal with stress and I don't need to smoke and I don't drink.
So how do you deal with it then?
Well, do you don't have the meditation exercise, do you?
No.
Oh well, then you need the technique. I'll open if you like.
Yes, I'd like to.
Would you like to do that?
Yes, please, yes.
Go over the technique, which is very simple.
Yes.
You can go through it with me if you like, although it's not so practical to do it in a group. It's something you do privately, see. But I hope I was making the points, and I don't mean to be overbearing. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I've asked about the meditation. This is a very private thing, but I might not be able to ask you personally, so I'm going to say openly.
Yes.
I became psychotic, and I started hearing voices, which I'm on medication for.
Yes.
And these voices are my conscience, telling me things about myself.
No, that's your false conscience. That's not your real conscience.
Things about myself.
No, that's your false conscience. That's not your real conscience. Don't mistake it for a real conscience. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Well, I wondered how to deal with it without taking medication. And
excellent, excellent. I'll put you on the side burner for a moment, sir, if you don't mind. But my whole lecture, and obviously you need that missing part. And so it's I think for £5, or if you haven't got the money, we'll give it to anybody that doesn't have the money. Anybody who had no money for it, you get it free. Is that right? Is that right? Thank you. And the book as well. All you need is sit quietly and just learn how to focus on that point in your mind where you take over and society leaves off.
Yeah, but I mean, what are the causes of stress? Let's just take an extreme case when you're about to lose everything through financial hardship. Now, how would you cope with that kind of stress?
Calmly.
I mean, supposing your house is about to be repossessed, or you're going to lose all your possessions, or everything you've ever worked for. Then how will or you're going to lose all your possessions, or everything you've ever worked for. Then how will you deal with that kind of stress?
You could go mad. I don't see how that would help.
But I don't see how meditation can help you in those circumstances.
Yeah, it can.
Well, I don't see how.
Well, it's because you've never dealt with everything up to now.
I mean, you just walk away from it, or do you meet it head on?
Well, you up to now.
I mean, you just walk away from it, or do you meet it head on?
Well, what you have to learn to do, you have to be very philosophical about this. You deal with the things you can deal with, the things you can do something about that you do, and the things you can't do something about, you learn to accept. That's the only way you can.
For more information, please write to FHU 27 Old Gloucester Street, London, WC1N 3X.